What's up, guys? Welcome to the June, oh, man, I'm already out of it. Welcome to the July Tidal Gardens YouTube live show. So we skipped a month of June. I think we were just simply too busy on the calendar. There's like a lot going on here. So unfortunately, we weren't able to do one last month, but we're making up for lost time with the show this month. So thank you all very much for attending. We, like usual, are starting about 10 minutes early just to make sure that the mic check is going okay, making sure that you guys can actually hear me okay. That'd be nice. Be real nice. And it also gives some time for the people to file it. So welcome, everyone. Let's see, David, what's up? Swarf is here early. Surf Kook and Kane Chand from Oxford, England. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, I always feel like there's nothing really going on here, but in reality, there's like a whole bunch going on. All the tanks are progressing really nicely. We've been acquiring some interesting new corals. I think that we're pretty well due for an update coming up here. I always feel, like I said, I always feel like there's not a ton new to talk about, but when you actually kind of look back at what was talked about in the last update, it's like, yeah, I'd say a good deal has been done. I think what really stops me from doing a whole bunch of like small updates is that there's always some really big projects that are looming. And I always feel like I want to wait until some of those get done. Like, for example, the generator, that's a big project, right? So I'm always waiting for like the really big stuff to get done so then I can kind of like talk about it because I'm more excited about that. But there's a lot of little stuff that happens along the way too that I think it's worth talking about. So what's up, Harkins Aquatics? Hello all, I can't wait to buy corals to QT for the new tank. Awesome, awesome. And Jude Clark, hello from South Africa. Welcome, Jude. Yeah, we just got one of our QTs emptied. We lost track of how long we were quarantining that particular tank. I think it ended up going for like over 100 days because we just kind of lost track. And then eventually we got back onto the calendar for that particular QT. And now all of those corals got into the new systems. And we are ready to put a whole bunch more corals into the QT. Also, another small but big change, we are in the process of putting together a much larger quarantine system, mainly for SPS corals. Our current 2 quarantine systems are fairly small. I would say that they're in the ballpark of, I don't know, 40 to 60 gallons a piece. This new one is closer to like 150 gallons. It looks like it's actually larger than Becca's tank, if you guys have seen any of the updates on that tank. And I think that mainly that one will be more for Acropora. And I'm hoping to hopefully soon place an order with some friends to get a whole bunch of like a lot of different strains of some high-end pieces that we don't currently have in our collection. So I'm excited about that. But that's going to take a little bit of elbow grease. I'll tell you a story a little bit later about this sump that I acquired, or I should say reacquired, because it's a 20-year-old sump that I had custom built back in right around the year 2000. So it's literally a 20-year-old sump. And I had used it for like a long time. Probably I used it for about 10 years, and I sold it to a friend, and he never used it for like 10 years. And I eventually bought it back from him. And I have to kind of refurbish it, but I'll tell you what, it's in like really, really good condition already. But it's just a matter of just polishing up and making sure that there's no like weird contaminants that have like built up over a decade. So yeah, a lot of little things, a few big things, and I'm hoping for some clarification on some really big things. But yeah, before we get too far into this, we've got about 5 minutes left to go. So I'm assuming that since nobody complained about the audio, that you guys can hear me okay. I would like to say some thank yous to the Patreon, and the YouTube membership crowd. So real quick, let's go through the list. Thank you, Bill Russell, Brandy Camp, Christopher Frame, Harkins Aquatics, Jeremy Altman, Alan Jackson. Okay, this is a new person, and I'm sorry, I might butcher your last name, but Allura Belargian, Chuck Admire, Don Bowman, Ernest Wallace Jr., Gene A. Van Voorst, Greg Zimmerman, Gwen Nicodemus, K-Boss, new person again, and I might butcher your first name, Kalyani Tridendam. I might butcher both your first name and your last name, but thank you very much for the $5 Patreon membership. Keith Singer, Kevin Cortez, Lisa Clow, Puddle Aquatics, Rebecca Hall, Reef Infidel, Rigoberto Rodriguez III, Ryan Kern, Santa Nomine, Scotty D, Skylar Korn, Sue Hemmons, The Classroom Reef, and Thomas Tarrant. And on the YouTube membership side of the spectrum, thank you to Kev Andrews, Sarah Edwards, Jerry Albright, Justin Harden, Joseph Posada, Jeremy Place, 328 Reef, Deidre Zuenner, and 2 Please Coral Reef. So thank you all very much. Oh. All right. Harkin says audio is crisp. Thank you, thank you. Harkins, at some point, you and I need to talk about a trip to Vegas. We were originally planning on doing like a trip, and then it fell through because of everything that happened in 2020, and like the big trade show out there that I wanted to attend was canceled, blah blah blah. So I would like to at some point schedule a trip out to see Harkins and get a tank tour of some friends that he's got out there that have some nice large aquariums. So we'll touch base, Harkins. So what is up, everybody? I'm behind in chat, so quickly, Jerian Meyer, hello from the Netherlands. Hello, Eddie Ortiz, Michael Butler, recognize. Let's see. Jobil Tuts, am I Filipino? I am not. Than, what's your favorite Monty? I don't know if I have a favorite Monty. There is a Montipora setosa that's pretty cool. Normally they're orange, but there's one variant out there that I think is like a 4-colored swirl that I kind of like a lot. Guanc Reef Keeping, hello from Maryland. Let's see. ATF, hello. And Jay Hansen from Norway, cool. Have never been to Norway, but I would like to visit. And Bo Eck, hello from Wadsworth, Ohio, which is like 5 minutes down the road here. Very cool. All right, got 1 minute left. Oh. Don't know what it's been like around you guys, but we have been alternating between sweltering heat and a lot of rain. Last few days it's been pretty much like a steady, constant swampy rain. So we're battling tons and tons of humidity. Not my favorite. Kyle Jameson, hey Than, from Tucson, Arizona. One of my very close friends is from Tucson. I talk to her all the time. I'm kind of jealous of your lack of humidity. Humidity is the worst. It's so brutal here. It's like 100% humidity right now, I bet, outside. It's like, imagine Florida, and that's what Ohio is. Yeah, quite literally, temperature and everything. It's like 90 degrees and humid probably. It's gross. All right, so anyway, let's get started. Yoink. All right. So the number of items on this particular live show, I believe, is 230 something. So we're going to be going for a little over 2 hours. Yeah. So Harkin says it was 118 over in Vegas. So usually when I was in Vegas, it was very dry heat, and that was entirely tolerable. Like if it's 100 degrees outside, I can wear a suit if it's dry. But if it's like, if I'm in, for example, New Orleans and it's 100% humidity, no, I can't do anything. It's like there's nothing that can make this okay. Like it's just this sweltering, crushing heat. Swap went smooth, yes. I'm trying something slightly different. Like I try different things all the time for these live shows. And I actually exported a 4K file rather than my normal 1080p file. So it's a much larger file. And I did it in a different format because I kind of messed up in the editing, and that's kind of why I got stuck with the 4K thing. And so I had to kind of export a 4K thing. But I exported it as a different format, and I wasn't sure how it would play with my broadcasting software, so far so good. Now, what was funny is that this file took 20 hours to render. Yeah. So that export was like, I hit the button to make it go, and I came back the next day, and it was not done. So that's pretty awesome. It's very humid in Tucson due to monsoon season, but it only lasts like 2 months. But yeah, from Youngstown originally, so I know your pain. Yeah, it's tough out here. It's real tough. And, you know, it turns out that my air conditioning in this building is slightly undersized. Like this room isn't bad, but when you consider that it is hot outside and there's a lot more aquariums going on downstairs, there's a lot of humidity and a lot of devices. And we only have a 5-ton air conditioner. It's a 3-phase, which is kind of nice, but it is only a 5-ton air conditioner on this building for the main space. And I can tell that on certain days, it struggles to keep up with like the heat. Let's see, another thing that we're kind of working through is that since we have like such high humidity, the nice thing, I guess, is that the air conditioner runs so frequently because it is kind of toasty. But when it's not running and it's very humid outside, it's also very, very, very humid inside. So we're seeing like in the early morning, we're seeing like 70% humidity inside the building, which is no bueno. You really want to keep that closer to like 50% at the top end. So I was in some talks with different manufacturers of big commercial dehumidifiers, and I'm getting some stupendously expensive quotes that I'm not altogether happy with. So for example, the first quote came from, I'm not going to name the companies, it doesn't matter because most people aren't familiar with the companies anyway. First quote came in at $107,000 for the dehumidification system. And the second quote isn't back yet, but they said that the first quote that the other company gave, or that was 6 figures, was not completely out of the realm of possibility. So I'm like, great. That's amazing. That's just outstanding. I won't be doing that at that price point. So here's the thing. When I went into Aquashella down in Orlando, I had visited Top Shelf Aquatics. And I was talking to them about dehumidification because, you know what, we're not going to talk about all the nice corals that they have or anything. We're going to talk about like the real nuts and bolts of a coral farm. So it's like, let's talk about humidity down here in Florida. And so they had these Quest dehumidification units, and those are kind of like these prosumer models that are kind of like designed for like the weed market. I mean, they're for the growing market, but let's be real, it's for weed. And so they probably remove like 500 pints per day. It's about that size, and they cost about $7,000 a piece. They got 2 of them. So when I was talking to these dehumidifier sales reps, I was like, listen, there's a coral farm down in Florida. It's roughly the size of this place, and they are using 2 units that are about 7 grand a piece. So somewhere between the 14 grand that they're doing for their dehumidification and the $100,000 quote that this other company is saying, there's got to be something that works for me. So keep that in mind. So we'll see what this next company comes back with as far as like a dehumidification plan. But yeah, so these are like the fun big projects that I get to try to worry about. Okay, so by the way, hi Rico, what's up? Harkins, just buy a big AC. Now that would normally work. Now there's unfortunately what we have are kind of like some shoulder seasons where it might be every bit of 50 degrees outside and rainy. So it's going to be too cool for an air conditioner to come on. And it's going to be 100% humidity because it's raining out. So any kind of like air exchange, all it's going to do is going to swap out our 70% humidity air inside for 100% humidity outside. And there's probably a good 4 months of this like mid-range, because like in Vegas, you're not going to run into like the type of humidity outside. So like we're very limited on, and I'm blown away by just how humid it is here. I mean, even in the wintertime, I was really surprised at how I was expecting that it was going to be a lot drier. You know, it's so freezing cold in Ohio, blah blah blah, right? It's really only crazy freakishly dry in the deadest of dead winter, and it's only freakishly dry in the deadest of dead summer. But I mean, we're in like mid-July, and it's 100% humidity outside, like right now. And we've been having like 88-degree weather. So we're not in dead summer, and we haven't been in dead summer all year. There's all these little in-between cases where I effectively just have to dehumidify the air that I'm working with inside, and that is it. I just have to practically ignore what's going on outside, because whatever's going on outside is just not helping my situation. Anyway, yeah, Marcus really said it's the tomato market. Yeah, the growers. Okay, so quick question from Surf Kook. How does this work? So if you'd like to purchase corals, assuming that you're in the United States, you can go to titledgardens.com/live. You can check the description of this video, or you can check the pinned comment, but that will take you to where all these corals are. We're on item number 14 right now. And if you just want to go directly to the website, you'll see thumbnails for all of them that are even coming up. So you can skip ahead if you like. We really don't care. This is more for like the audience interaction. And also you get to see some pretty cool video of each of the corals rather than just a thumbnail on the website. So for example, this bloodlust Cyphastria, you can get kind of like a cool little, you know, parallax slide of the coral. And if you look at the top left, you see that little graphic showing a color temperature change. So we're kind of, this is a special effect, so it's not practical, but I'm kind of illustrating the transition from like a daylight lighting scheme to a more actinic lighting scheme. So it looks really, really subtle over the course of about like 30 some odd seconds, but we're starting at a very kind of warm color and we're transitioning to a very cool blue color, and kind of like trying to bring out some of the more fluorescent highlights that happen under actinic. It works better for some corals than others, but you can get like an idea. So if you have like more blue lights in your system, you can kind of pay more attention to like the latter part of each coral display, and it'll kind of give you like a better idea of what it might look like in your system. And if you need to go back, you know, and see, you know, past corals, you can do that very easily on the YouTube video. But yes, all of that. And there's even an FAQ about like how to best purchase during the live show. So you have to fully check out in order to get the item. Just having like a shopping cart full of stuff does you no good. Like that is not reserving the corals at all for you. However, there are multiple of each, not everyone, but of most. So you'll actually see a little graphic pop up that'll say like there's multiple available of a certain coral. So number 18 here, there isn't a multiple of, it is just this one being shown. So whoever buys this Meteor Shower Cyphastria is going to get exactly that piece. But the other ones where there's like multiples available, you'll get something very representative of that. It'll be roughly that same size. And as far as size comparisons go, the Frag plug is a little over an inch. It's like 1 1/8 or so. So that kind of gives you a little idea. And most of the stuff here isn't recently fragged. You can see that the corals have grown down onto each of the Frag plugs. And I mean, that's good for the customer because, you know, I think that people generally like to see stuff that's been grown in a bit. But it also helps out for us when it comes time to ship, because it's less likely that this stuff is going to like get broken off during shipping, which can happen, but it's less likely when it's nicely grown in. Harkins, inside your building will not be low humidity in the winter though. Oh, it will not be low humidity in the winter? It can be. So in the winter time, when it's like really cold out, we can crank up. We have air exchangers that kind of maintain air temperature, but will swap out humidity. So if it's dry out, when it's like bone-chillingly dry cold out, we can bring that chilled cold air in, but it won't cool our space because the air that's going out will heat the air coming in. And so we don't lose that much heat in the process. But what we are expelling is a lot of humidity and bringing in like very cold, dry air. And then it kind of like it'll come in at about 70. So it's a little chillier, but it's not 5 degrees, right? Now, in those cases, when we crank up our air exchange, what will happen is we can actually bring down the humidity inside the building quite substantially to about 40%, which is nice. Okay. Couple of questions. Let's go. Snap goes bruh. So, I have a lot of eagle-eye zoas. How can I frag them without having to take apart the scape? That can be a little challenging. If you're very, very, very careful, you might be able to peel it off of the aquascape using like wood carving tools. But you have to be really careful because there's toxicity issues with zoanthids sometimes. It's not quite as bad as like Paleothoa, which could be a lot worse of a candidate as far as like toxicity with palytoxin issues. Zoanthids can have palytoxin also, which is why I'm encouraging some degree of caution. But the other thing that you could probably do if you didn't want to try to like delicately like peel them off without damaging them is to delicately break apart those pieces of rock. Nikolai Morel. How's it going with the 3D printed Frag plugs? Not super great. Now, there's a couple things I like about the Frag plugs. Number one, I like how smooth they come out for us. I like that because when it comes to cleaning, we do a lot of cleaning. I mean a lot of cleaning here. So a lot of the other Frag plugs that are dark oftentimes are some sort of ceramic that's been coated, and sometimes that coating gives it just enough grit that it's very difficult to like clean, and any kind of algae that grows is kind of like gets more embedded into that substrate. The 3D printed stuff is almost like glass smooth. You just wipe your finger off and off comes all the algae. Wonderful. The problem is it's not buoyant because it does sink, but it's very light. So if I like put like a wave in the water with my hand, all those coral Frag plugs want to take off. And so we kind of like fixed that by putting a little lip on the bottom of the Frag of the Frag plug, so that on the stem, so that when it tries to like come out, it kind of gets anchored in there. But it's still not ideal. Right now we don't have. It's one of those things where I don't have a favorite Frag plug. I just don't. We're trying constantly new things. But the 3D printed ones, good and bad, but we don't currently, we're going through our inventory of them, but we're not like actively looking to make more of them right now. Okay, going back to a question I see. Since Becca is getting her own tank, does it mean she is a staple part of the team for good now? She's been part of the team for over a year. Like, she does a lot of work here. I mean, a whole bunch of work. Whole bunch. Let's see. No, and she graduated very quickly. I mean, she was only an intern here for maybe like 4 months. And then for the past like year and a half, she's been here full time. Let's see. Bradley Hernley, you should look into geothermal heating and cooling. Technically, we have geothermal cooling. It is somewhat effective. We need greater cooling capacity, and we're working on that. It turns out that we blow through a lot of rainwater collection here. And so when you size rainwater collection, the companies that are doing that math for you are assuming that you have some sort of normal household application for all this rainwater. And so they look at your roof size and they're like, well, you know, given a 12-month period, with this roof size, you can collect in the state of Ohio at this latitude, you can collect, let's say, I don't know, 100,000 gallons of rain. And for most people, they would never in a million years be able to use 100,000 gallons of water, right? But really what happens is what's going on now is you get patches of rain. You get like a whole bunch of rain and then maybe like a month or two of no rain. So that average doesn't really help us out if we're only collecting 10,000 gallons at a time. And there's times where, like, because there was no rain, we need to actually fill up the cistern in order to both make RO and to use it as a cooling source. The other thing is when it's like super rainy, you can't collect more than 10,000 gallons. So a lot of the extra rain that's coming down is just lost. It just gets expelled. So I want to at least double the size of our rainwater collection to about 20,000 gallons. Is it perfect? Maybe not, but I mean 20,000 will give us obviously double the capacity and double that flexibility for both cooling and to make use of the heavy rain when it comes. So that's kind of the plan. When is that going to happen? I have zero idea because it is very difficult to get contractors to do anything on any type of schedule. It's a pain. It'll happen when it happens. We will eventually expand our collection and geothermal capabilities here. Okay. Let's see. Kyle Jameson, would you say cooler actinic light is better for growth, or is it more of an aesthetic thing? I think it's more of an aesthetic thing because there's certain lights that are like legendary for growing coral fast that almost nobody uses these days, and they are very daylight colored. Yeah, lighting is only one aspect of it, but I think that these days coral farms are prioritizing appearance as opposed to growth, because the way that the market is now, if your corals aren't well colored, and well colored means practically, you know, Instagram ridiculous color, you can't sell them. So for example, this, well, the neon orange pavone is going away. What's next? Okay, so zoanthids, for example. If your zoas aren't like fully open all the time and are displaying all the colors that they're supposed to be, if they're browned out for some reason, it does you no good if you have 100 plugs of these Princess Aurora zoanthids. You can't move them. So the priority has definitely shifted from just pure production to coloration, and whatever production you get, there you go. So a lot of times, and people, I don't even know if like the coloration thing benefits from more daylight or not. Like there's a couple folks here that are like blue light, all the things, but he's kind of a noob. Like the people like me that have been in this for like 30 something years, like we're more used to growing under metal halides and stuff like that. And you can get fantastic colors in daylight. Case in point, there is a sunlight only coral system at the Waikiki Aquarium in Hawaii. And those corals in this like outdoor tank are like day glow bright, and it's just in straight sunlight under about 6 inches of water. It is yellow light, and these corals look like they look like they're lit from the inside. That's how bright they are. So there's that anecdote for you. Let's see, Jeremy Phillips. You have a few crust coral, quote unquote crust corals for sale. How long does it typically take for those to start branching? It really depends. It really depends. Because once a coral starts to grow, it's usually pretty fast. But that starting to grow part could take a while. Or it could be instant. It kind of just depends. Sammy Hung, how can you tell the difference between acan lords or micromussa lords and favia, especially when they're not labeled like at an LFS? It's one of those things where you just kind of have to get used to what they look like. Just get more familiar with it, because it's kind of like hard to describe two corals that are kind of seemingly similar in structure, but when you're used to seeing them more and more and more, it's almost like you'd never mistaken a Chihuahua for a German Shepherd. They're both dogs. It's like, how can you tell? They just look different. And that's kind of like the situation there. Just look at a lot of photos, and then when you see the next one, you'll be like, yeah, that's a micromussa, or yeah, that's a favia, or yes, that's a favites. It's just a recognition thing. Okay, some folks talking about some 3D printed stuff. I need more weight. I mean, I think that our stuff is 100% infill, and it does, like I said, it does sink, but it's when there's like some kind of disturbance or something like that, they start taking off. Mohammed, do you deliver overseas? No, we don't. US only. The whole international shipping thing is a very different ballgame. Harkin says, I always thought coral farms should have a grow out system and a coral color up system. Maybe. Yeah, I mean, sometimes things are just more. Sometimes more is just more. So Hen Roth is asking, what can cause corals to lose their colors? Pretty much anything that stresses them out. So any kind of change, and change happens all the time. Shipping stress. So when people get corals from us, sometimes it's like you have to wait a little while. Now there's certain things that are very consistent in coloration. Zoanthids, for example, tend to be more consistent in color, but certain things like we were just talking about micromussa, tend to be more shifty. Chalices can be shifty. SPS, especially Acropora, they can be very shifty in colors. In certain cases, like the really high demand Acropora tenuises, things like that. So we're talking like Walt Disney's and Homewreckers, that sort of thing. They are most definitely going to change in color during transport. And once they get into your tank, it might take 1 month, maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months for them to achieve peak coloration, assuming that they can even achieve peak coloration in your particular aquarium. Because any big change in your water chemistry during that time is really going to be a setback. For example, our home wreckers now we've had for over 6 months, and they are just now starting to add their like third and fourth colors. And for the longest time, they were mostly like a green Acropora here. And then slowly the tips start coming in. And it kind of has like a, if I recall correctly, geez, it kind of has like a brighter yellowish tip, maybe like a little purplish tip. But then the kind of like the orange highlights start to like show up. It takes some time. It took a long time for us. Partly because, yeah, we do have some fluctuating chemistry in a relatively new system. But yeah, if you want to give your corals the best chance at maintaining good coloration, it really does come down to rock solid stability of your system. So a lot of I guess consistent maintenance and a lot of testing, just so you know where you're at and where your tank is going and how it responds to the different things you're doing, like your dosing regimen, your water changes, your feeding. All these things play into it. What lighting you've got going on, and has that been changing? These days, there's less change involved because you're talking about LEDs. But if you're running T5s over the course of time can change color, they can change intensity pretty dramatically, and that's going to affect your corals. Let's see. Real quick, Lisa from Lacree Fine Art. I started wanting a spring-eyed damsel because of one of your older videos. Besides biting you, do you feel there's any cons to those fish behavior-wise? No, I think they're fine. I mean, damsels are kind of jerks, right? But they typically mess with other fish less than they're going to mess with you. I think they're all about that violence when like you put your hand in the water and you're kind of like in their territory. They're more than happy messing with you. But I do think that they do a very good job with like maintaining certain pests. Like the one pest that I think that most people buy them for are for flatworms that are just kind of on the glass, or kind of that rust colored flatworm. They just get picked off by this fish. Like the bigger, more problematic, like LPS eating ones, they do less of a great job with that, but they might even eat some of those. But yeah, I think they're a good thing to have in every system. Tom G, how long does it take Coraline to show up on the plugs in your systems? Fast. And it kind of depends a little bit for us just because of seasonality. I expect that as the sun in the greenhouse gets like brighter, a lot of Coraline doesn't like that. But when it's like darker and when we stay up on our calcium alkalinity supplementation, it goes crazy. I mean, we scrape Coraline very aggressively now in a lot of our tanks. So yeah, I have a feeling it's a lot. It grows really quick. Guanc Reef Keeping. What happened to the June show? We were just too busy. I had a lot going on. It was my birthday in June as well. So yeah, just lots of stuff. Aqua balls. New in saltwater. I love corals. I set up 2 tanks, one for quarantine and the other for display tank. When you quarantine I'm assuming corals, when you're moving them into display, you have to coral dipping. So I would say that you have to do some dipping a number of times during the quarantine process even. And I'll tell you what, it's good that people are taking quarantine a little bit more seriously. We, for the longest time, didn't have the facilities to even do quarantine. And even with quarantine, stuff can get through. And this is what I kind of like, I have the utmost respect for Aptasia now. We had Aptasia show up in a fish quarantine system that's literally never seen corals. I have so much more faith in Aptasia than anybody's ability to get rid of Aptasia. However, right now we have these Aptasia eating nudibranchs called Bergia nudibranchs. And those things are freaking awesome. Like, we had a tank that had a lot of Aiptasia in it, and it was like to the point where it's like, that looks like an insurmountable Aiptasia problem. And we put these things in there, and one day you just look in this tank and all the Aiptasia are gone. And the nudibranchs, which are normally nocturnal, are now kind of like out and about looking for food. And we kind of have to like try to catch them and put them into other tanks that might have Aiptasia in it. So we're just kind of constantly like fishing. We might have put in like 6 into this big tank. And then nowadays, we could probably, if we really tried, catch 50 a day, like really tiny ones, like the baby ones, catch about 50 a day and then relocate them here and there. So hopefully one day I'll just wake up and then we just won't have any Aiptasia. But knowing what I know about Aiptasia, like I said, I think they're way better at multiplying and surviving than anybody is at eradicating them. And it's like, there's plenty of places that, well, I don't even know if there's many places that would say that they don't have Aiptasia. But I guarantee that if we made $1 million bet, I will find an Aiptasia within 5 minutes. Anybody can take me up on that bet. Anybody. I will find it. Because they're really good at what they do. Oh, let's see. Tattooed Dancer. Don't forget, pests can cause discoloration, and acro turning paler brown could easily be acro eating flatworms. Very true. Very true. That's actually one thing that we've had to definitely battle quite a lot in the past. And one thing that you could always tell is like, there's just like in a sea of like nice colored acros, you just see one that looks a little dusky, and it's like, that one's suspicious. You take that one out and dip it, and sure enough, it has like some kind of problems. Same thing with like red bugs. But luckily, at least with red bugs, I mean, people freak out about red bugs, but they're the easiest thing to take care of like I've ever seen. Like, all you need to do is just toss in like Interceptor, and boom, your problems are over. Like, that's it. Two shots of Interceptor over the course of 2 weeks, gone. Now, acro eating flatworms, that's a much bigger problem. Like, flatworms in general, super tough. Super tough. Let's see. They don't eat flatworms that much. No, nothing really wants to eat flatworms. I even bought these nudibranchs that are like blue and black that do eat flatworms. They came in, they ate a bunch of flatworms, then they died that same day because it turns out most flatworms are actually toxic. Yeah. Fish pooped out Aiptasia. They can do that. Swarf, that is true. What's weird is the fish that we put in there weren't copper bands. We don't put copper bands into quarantine. They're too delicate. So something else that might have been a clownfish or a damsel or a foxface pooped out an Aiptasia, and there was an Aiptasia sitting in a fish quarantine tank. Yes, Chevy fish, Bergia nudibranchs annihilate Aiptasia. They really do. Isaac Taylor, I just overspent. You're welcome. Thank you. I got big bills here. Trust me. All of this is highly, highly, highly welcome. Got the biggest bills right now. Harkins, can you ship me some? The only reason we don't have Bergia nudibranchs as a stock item on our website to sell is I don't know at any given time if we can just find them and catch them to sell to people, because I think that people want like a big fat one full of eggs, and it's like, yes, I would love to send you one. I don't know if I can just find one today, that sort of thing. They're nocturnal. They hide under aquascapes and all kinds of stuff. It'd be nice, because I mean, I bet if we put Bergia nudibranchs for sale right now, I could sell them for $20 a day, all day, all night. Like, it'd be a great seller. But just logistically on my end, I don't know if we can. We might just do a thing where like, hey, we found one, it's for sale right now, come get it, that sort of thing. But I would love to keep breeding a ton of them here. Actually, I hope I can't breed a ton of them here, because that means that like I'm out of Aiptasia. That would be the ideal situation, more so than selling nudibranchs. But Yeah, I mean, like I said, knowing what I know, Aptasia will find a way. The nudibranchs will always have some kind of food source here. But it's more like a spread the love thing. So actually, there is always an outside chance, guys, that if you buy some coral from us, there might be some Bergia nudibranch eggs that might just pop open and then take care of your Aptasia problem for you. That's a free one on the house. And you know what? I know that's happening because I've had some customers complain about nudibranchs. And like, if it was like on a Montipora, I might understand, right? There's might be like a Montipora eating nudibranch that looks very similar to a Bergia, but they ordered like a zoanthid. And there's never going to be a Montipora eating nudibranch on a zoanthid. And you look closely, and sure enough, it's an Aptasia eating Bergia. It's like, that one's a free one on the house. So there you go. Harkins is like, I'll take even just one. I have one annoying Aptasia. So one Aptasia is like not going to keep any of that stuff fed. Like if you just have one Aptasia, you might have to like just manually do that, right? Yeah, getting them out of your pipes, that's a much bigger challenge. Snap goes, bro. Never had Aptasia, thankfully. You will. Be in this hobby long enough, you will. Yeah. Yeah, the really tough pests to get rid of are the ones that just breed like crazy. And you know, there's certain ones that I wouldn't even necessarily say are like pests. They're just things that that just are just really good at replicating, and they'll be very, very happy in like a dark piece of like plumbing pipe. And they'll just like kind of just hang out there. Or they'll just be like perfectly okay, like practically on the inside of a pump. They don't mind all that like water flow and everything. They don't care. Snap goes, but nope, I refuse to get them. It's like, I don't think it's a consent problem. Gabriel Berkey, hey, it's been a minute. Nice to catch a live stream. Yeah. We didn't have one in June. We were just simply too busy to get it on the schedule and to get it all set up. But yeah, it is good to be back. We haven't had a little audience interaction for a little while now. Yeah, if we can find a way to collect them, like the Bergias, we'll do that, because like I said, I am sure that they will sell well. I think we just have to kind of get used to their behavior too, because there's like certain like hidey holes that they really like, and if we can just kind of like periodically get in there, just grab a few of them up and offer them for sale for that day, that sort of thing. Yeah, they're really cool animals, and what's kind of interesting about them is they basically outbreed Aptasia. So they will just like you have like maybe like a half dozen of these Bergias, and I mean in no time you will have hundreds of them, hundreds of little babies, and they will just mow down like one day. Literally every Aptasia will be gone. It's just like this is like the miracle thing. And if you could be like a real bro about it, try catching up as many as you can and give them to your friends or sell them. You do you. But yeah, because Aptasia is no fun for anybody. But this is like the most effective thing that I've really seen. But you have to be patient with it, because it's not a copper band. Like a copper band, it's like you stick this thing in front of it like a cake and it just goes crazy, right? It just eats it in like 5 seconds. Bergias aren't like that. You put it in your tank, 3 months later, your Aptasia are gone. And these days, I'm having like the hardest time getting Aptasia eating fish, because you get like a copper band, and it's like 70% chance it's not going to live. Like, it's the most frustrating thing, and it's such an expensive fish. you can't really quarantine them. Shoot, you can't even just get them to live. Like, just like, please, just come here. Please, just eat. You know, just start eating for me. We got these ones even locally. We didn't even have to get them shipped, and they were eating already. Like, they ate, and then one day one of them is dead. A week later, the other one is dead. It's like, what the heck? You guys were literally eating mysis and aptasia already, and you just decided to just one day keel over. Like, there's like not a mark on that fish, and all of a sudden, bloop. So yeah, I mean, I could use like 100 of those, and I can't like I just can't get them to survive. So like I said, this whole little nudibranch experiment has gone extremely well. Chevy fish, aptasia eating filefish are also good. I've never owned one. I've heard that they are touch and go with LPS. So that's kind of like my hesitation there. Harkin says you need a tank that only has aptasia. It's like, I'd rather have like the complete inability to keep Bergias alive. I would love to have that problem. It's like, oh, they ran out of aptasia. Bummer. That'd be like, oh, I'm in heaven. There's like two pests that just annoy the crap out of me. One, obviously, aptasia is no fun. Like obviously, like the tank ruiningly bad stuff, like the flatworm stuff. By the way, we found a halfway good way to deal with flatworms. It is the constant breakdown and cleaning of individual tanks. It is brutal work, but we have like pretty much dedicated ourselves to it here, and it is very effective. So I'm like very happy with the direction that's going. But the other kind of a pest that kind of annoys me is vermitid snails, and I think I'm gonna try the bumblebee thing. I've heard that they actually don't really work, but I'll try like a handful to see if that does it. Because right now, like, we're manually removing them, and then what happens is like the 2 that are remaining will sexually reproduce, and now you have 100 again. So I want to just go in there and just try to remove as many as I can, put in a couple bumblebee snails, and then thoughts and prayers. Insane can't talk. Insane Reefer. What's up, Dan? It's been a while since I've been here. It's kind of been a while since I've been here too. There's a bunch of little things going on. There's a couple of big things that are kind of in the works. When are those big things going to happen? I don't know. It's one of those things. But I kind of like to save the building updates and stuff like that for the big things. But sometimes that timeline gets pushed out super far. We do, however, have some big time progress going on with like the packing station and stuff, which is really nice. I shared the packing station to social media. I don't know if you guys like saw that, but that's coming together nicely. So Hen Ross says, who has a tank of only aptasia? Hopefully nobody. So it's funny how like the mentality around aptasia has like changed, because there was a book that I referred to when even starting this whole business called, I think it's like coral aquaculture or something like that. Shoot, I even forget. But it was basically about doing a coral farm in a greenhouse. And at one section of the book, the author just kind of like talks about some like possibilities for future types of filtration and things. And one of the things was to have a kind of like a refugium that is just aptasia, and you have like a UV sterilizer on the end of it, so that like anything that the aptasia do would have to like get through the UV before it gets back in your tank, so that way you don't get aptasia into your tank. But effectively, like, you have an aptasia garden tank So any kind of like uneaten food or anything like that, or detritus, goes over and through this this Aiptasia refugium, and it just gets all like consumed. And every now and again, you can scrape up all this Aiptasia as like a nutrient removal method. And I mean, this is like just kind of brainstorming stuff, but it was like on the page, so that's why I bring it up. But yeah, you go from that to like nobody even wants a molecule of this in their tank anymore. Okay. Tattoo dancer. I have a single snake polyp. It's just been the one for about 5 years now. It opens at night but doesn't grow new polyps. Any tips for this rare coral? You know, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's like a Jake Adams question. Like, I don't pay very much attention to my snake polyps. I don't know if they've ever really divide. I'm pretty sure they probably don't divide, but I don't know if they've added new polyps. I wonder if it's a sexual only thing with them. Yeah, they're a curious little creature. They're weird. John Bennier, vibrant work on bubble algae? I think so. It takes a long time, but I think it does. I love Paleothoa like death, but it's rarely distributed in Japan. It's personal preference. I personally do not care for Paleothoa. This is not my thing. Like real pallies, not like zoanthids that are big that get called pallies, but like real pallies. I mean, I guess like Paleothoa grandis are pretty cool, but there's like some just brown colored ones, and I don't even like to like mess with them. So they tend to just like take over a corner of a tank, and I'm like, I'd really like to remove that, but I'm kind of like scared about toxicity issues. Like I just don't want to mess with that. So not my favorite thing. Aquaballs, where are you guys located? Ohio. Can we visit your store? Not right now. We used to take appointments, but there's never been like a walk-in policy. It was always by appointment. And right now we're not taking appointments. Largely because of how busy that we are these days. We don't have like the time and staffing just to like be able to show a retail customer around. Like that's just not a thing. Yeah, like I don't even know what that would look like, because there's always like so much to do here. It would be like really disruptive. Maybe soon, but we'll have to see. Tom G, anyone buy a Nexus anemone yet? Yeah, we sold a few. I think we traded away one. We've definitely sold at least one or two. Catching up on chat here real quick. I picked up a 46 gallon with a yellow tang and a few clowns and mushrooms for $3.50, but filled with Aiptasia, doing everything I can not to cross-contaminate to my display. Yeah, it's a good plan. Like I said, though, they're really good at what they do. They're really, really good. And as far as best advice to give a beginning new reef keeper, really it comes down to doing as much research as possible on as many topics as possible. And unfortunately, you kind of have to get through a lot of the noise of online, because in the past, there was almost no information. You kind of had to like rely on your local fish shop and kind of go by their recommendations. Sometimes those are good, sometimes they're not so great. But these days, I think that there's so much information out there. And what's kind of nutty is like, you get these like silos of knowledge where unfortunately you have like one person that's an authority figure, let's say. And they may or may not even be that good of an authority figure, but they get accepted as an authority figure. And then you have like a million like online voices that just echo that. And so it comes across like, oh, well, yeah, this is like the best way to do it. But it's really like a whole bunch of people that probably have never tried a particular method that are just repeating the message of one supposed expert in a topic. And what tends to happen over time is that a lot of the original experts eventually get discredited for being charlatans because there's not a lot of actual like high-end knowledge in this. There's a lot of wannabe experts, and I'm like the exact opposite. I don't want to be an expert in anything. Like, I barely want to answer any questions, but here I am. No, so like I'll make it like a sports analogy for you, okay? Sports analogy. So if you have like a favorite sports team and that you're following all the news, like let's say, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, right? And it's like I'm gonna follow all the Browns blogs out there. I'm gonna follow all the podcasts that I can about the Cleveland Browns and the NFL. I'm like so into all this information, and I'm gonna listen to all the sports shows and stuff like that, okay? And then I'm gonna come to some consensus about like, how good is my team? Well, a better place to go is the online betting places, because here are people that have to put literally their money on the line in order to make their living. Okay, so the type of analysis that they have to do in order to like make their numbers work, like everything else, those vlogs, those podcasts, those sports shows, they are entertainment, right? They are entertainment to complement the NFL's entertainment product. But the sports betting folks, their livelihood depends on their ability to get some of these things right. Similarly, I think that in this industry, you might want to take the advice from people whose livelihoods literally depend on something working. So it's not like somebody that has like a tank and it's like, yay, like I tried this new thing out, I'm such an expert, this is working great. It's like, cool, it might, but look to like a coral farm that literally has like millions of dollars at risk. So if that bogus filter really doesn't do its job, if that bogus chemical really doesn't do its job, that salt brand that like everybody likes or doesn't like, it's like, okay, there's millions of dollars in coral on the line. If something goes wrong, if this product isn't what it says it is, if there's some fault in the product, yeah. So that's why like I tend to take advice from people who have had to, just by their very existence, put their money where their mouth is. I'm going to go ahead and take a listen to that. So for example, lighting brands. I know 3 prominent coral farms that have purchased over 200 to 300, maybe up to 500 units of Ecotech Radions. That is speaking a whole lot louder than, oh, so-and-so has a new light out, it's better than an Ecotech Radion. It's like, well, we'll see. But until there's some folks that are gonna take that level of risk, and we're not talking about an $800 risk on one light, we're talking about a multi-million-dollar risk, we'll see. So again, it kind of like goes to that thing. By the way, not sponsored by Ecotech. I'm gonna throw that out there. So yeah, that was my little rant on expertise in this hobby, right? You're gonna get a lot of differing opinions from the expert community out there, but what tends to happen in the professional circles tends to go much more slowly. There very well may be a much better light than an Ecotech Radion, but we will figure this out long after that product is introduced into the market. That's not going to be a, oh, this is the brand new light, it's great, it's going to replace everything. 2 years at best before anybody seriously adopts that at any commercial scale. Lisa from Black Reef Fine Art. Plus, a lot of YouTubers are not disclosing when a product they're promoting was given to them. So that's kind of like this little gray area, right? I disclose it just because like it's easy enough for me to do, right? But I think that there's actually like FCC guidelines about like when something is sponsored versus when there's like a sample product given to, you know, and like what does a free product really entail? Like, for example, I got a free unit that's like an ozone unit from Ozotech, right? I haven't installed it, haven't used it yet, but you know, I'd like to try it and then I'll report my results. Now, there is like kind of like an implicit bias because this company was nice enough to like give you a free product, right? But I think certain influencers will be influenced themselves differently by a brand, like especially like a smaller influencer that gets a free product for the first time. I'm going to go ahead and guess that they're never going to say a bad word about that company, right? And I think that, I forget what the actual guidelines are, but I know that, for example, if like, let's say Ecotech or Ozotech or any of these companies pays me for a sponsorship, I think by law I have to disclose that. You know, and YouTube actually even makes it easy for you to disclose that. They're like, hey, is there like a sponsorship in this video? You need to say yes to this button here, right? And that way, like all the different things are kind of like disclosed up front. By the way, somebody needs to buy this chalice. It is as good as it gets. This is the real thing. So for all of you like serious chalice collectors, this is the one. Get it. Yeah, not legal and gives the impression that they love something that was really just a freebie. Yeah, I mean, so the FCC has really not taken the hardest stance when it comes to this whole thing. And you know what's also like a weird phenomenon is that there are Instagram accounts that are, and maybe it's not necessarily in the reef aquarium hobby, so I'm not like calling anybody out. Let's just say like I'm talking about, I don't know, like perfume people. I don't know. Perfume Instagram, like smell-o-vision, right, through your phone. But they will do what looks like sponsored content to make them look like they were sponsored by a particular brand in order to like have more fake clout on a certain social media platform. So yeah, it's weird. You have folks that aren't getting free stuff, acting like they're getting free stuff, or acting like they're getting sponsorship, and you have people that are actually sponsored or are actually getting free samples and stuff like that to review that are not disclosing it. So it's like this weird like double ends of this of that spectrum. Okay. Let's answer some coral questions here. My Flameboy Favia has turned a burgundy color, not that fire engine red. Any tips for getting the color back? It is definitely a tank stability situation. We just propagated a whole bunch of Flameboy Favia, and they also turned like a duskier color. That particular coral has a wide variance in color. So it will, once it's happy, you get back to like that peak coloration. It is one of the nicest Favias that we have. One of them, top 5. Yeah, so just again, check your chemistry and check the stability of everything. Thomas Adesso, do you have tours of your facilities? Not really, no. There are a couple of like weird exceptions. Like lately somebody offered basically a king's ransom for some consulting time. And I'm like, that's a ton of money. I'm like, I hope you will actually get value out of this. But I'm not going to say no to that. So that person can come on by. But generally speaking, I mean, no, it's not just like, so I hope to be able to open that stuff up soon. But really, again, it's not like I'm freaked out about COVID necessarily. Like it's specifically our workflow is so different now that we don't have time for one person to walk somebody around here. Like that is just not a great use of time here. And so until we figure that little element out, the answer is going to be no, but hopefully soon. Oh, free or paid has to be disclosed legal. Yeah, I figured as much. Yeah. So what's funny is we don't get a ton of free stuff. So yeah, we don't get a ton of free stuff. Occasionally we do. Like we'll get like a pump here or there, or we'll get like a something here and there, and it's really cool. I mean, I get it, but a free sample product for us has a completely different gravity to somebody that just has a single like home aquarium that's getting a free thing as like an Instagram influencer or something. Because like I don't need, let's just throw Ecotech out there for example. I've never gotten like a free Ecotech light, nor would I actually necessarily want one, because what does one light do for me? Like I need 100 lights, right? So at that point, why don't we just like negotiate a deal for a volume discount at such and such tier based on this amount of stuff that we're going to be buying, you know, plus whatever you value, the exposure through Tidal Gardens, like social media will be, right? So like all that is part of the math equation. I didn't actually get anything free, but we are talking about like a big ass order. That's the sort of discussions I typically get into. And I don't think there's anything like FCC related in that. But you are getting a discount, but it's also definitely very much a volume-based discount, right? So it's like, yeah, it's like when you're spending like, you know, new car money on an order, it's like how sponsored, like how much of a conflict of interest sponsored thing was that really? You know, no, it's just a big order. It's like, yeah, you're placing distributor level orders. You're probably going to get a little price discount. So anytime you really want to save a ton of money, have that discussion with somebody. Like be able to put down, you know, Tesla Model Y money on a volume order. You're going to get some pretty hefty percentages. You can get some points. Tom Page, who else would like to stand to read them bedtime stories? I will give you guys nightmares. I'll read you some cosmic horror, some Lovecraft. You're like, there were no survivors. Yes, it's time to embrace the void. Amy Hawk, how can Xenia, I don't know, be happy? They hate my tank, but I love them. You know, Xenia is weird. They like certain tanks, and they just hate certain other tanks. Just anecdotally here, I've noticed that they tend to like a little bit warmer temperature. For example, in the wintertime here, they stop pulsing. But right now, in like the dead of summer, longer photo periods, slightly elevated temperatures, closer to 80, they tend to look a lot better. And they pulse and everything. Reef King, do you ship to the UK? Unfortunately, we do not. It's US only. However, Reef King, I encourage you to check out Charterhouse Aquatics. One of my friends works there, or I shouldn't say works there necessarily, but they provide some nice corals that you might like. The Herm 14, doing tank maintenance, listening to the stream. I totally agree with what Dan is talking about with all these experts, and all in with new tech and diodes and LED lighting. Time tells all. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, when you're kind of like a business owner, coral farm owner, like this sort of stuff has to be boring. Like there's just certain aspects of this hobby that have to be boring, like pump selection, light selection, salt selection. If you're having like an exciting conversation about salt, I guarantee you might be about to lose $1 million that week. Like things are about to go really, 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 really bad. You cannot have dramatic stuff go on about the most baseline things. Like, oh, I just tried this new supplement. You should try it. Nah, I do not think so. We're not gonna be like jumping into anything like that. Did you order a Model X? No, I did not. We were talking about a Model X because it falls into some IRS exception for like vehicles over 6,000 pounds that you can depreciate the entire thing immediately. And the thing is, I really don't want a Model X. I want a Cybertruck because I want like basically a stainless steel train car that drives itself and can just like drive me to Chicago with very little input from me. That's kind of like what I'm going for. So whenever like Tesla can like send me one, that'd be great. Or just send me the one that I prepaid for, that'd be great. These rants got me thinking, do I need a coffee or a beer? 3:06 p.m. Grab a coffee. Hi, I'm back. Why did LPS pricing so expensive now? Corals are really expensive. Like really expensive. A lot of LPS specifically relies on import. And when you talk about, because there's not as much farming going on the LPS end of the spectrum. There's a lot slower. Like, so this avatar chalice that you see over my shoulder here, that one is aquacultured, but it's fast enough. When it comes to things like Euphyllia, less so. Trachophilia is practically zero. Scoles, zero. Acanthophilia, definitely zero. So a lot of these things that like the less easy it is to propagate, you're gonna see like that rising dollar figure. Also, guys, I don't know if you know this, but this is on the internet. So Indonesians that are collecting corals for sale in the US market can see how much this 3/4 inch frag of chalice is going for. And there they are looking at this pizza-sized chalice thinking, in the past we would have sold this for 50 cents. But now that we see that it goes for $50 in the United States, yeah, for you to get this coral landed in your country, it will be at least $50 because it's big. That sort of stuff. Or we're gonna chop this thing ourselves a whole bunch of times and sell it a whole bunch of times over for about, $50. So yeah, there's a lot of price elevation there. Also, it's like harder and more expensive to get flights. The paperwork is a lot more involved now. There's also this looming coral ban stuff that's going on that's like elevating demand, such and such, blah 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 blah. Corals are expensive, very expensive. Having said that, this Hollywood Stunner chalice is $15. Not so expensive, but mainly it's because it's propagation. Like if you were to get this from the ocean, it would be, I don't know, $50 to $100. But aquaculture has its perks for everybody. Any new flavors tried in the frozen yogurt machine? Technically, my friend, it's a gelato machine for those keeping score. We tried vanilla, and that is the new standard for how awesome flavors can be. And I'm using more heavy cream now, so it's ridiculously fatty, which doesn't concentrate the flavor as much, but people like the consistency more. They like just how like fatty and smooth that is. So right now, vanilla is the thing. Like I went out to Amazon and I got this like bougie vanilla paste, which like for this much, it's like 20 bucks. And we've been making some really, really, really nice vanilla ice cream lately. Vanilla gelato. And I'm gonna try like some espresso flavored stuff in the future here and see how that goes. I want to see a wrap for a Tidal Gardens Cybertruck. I'm thinking like just matte black. Just go like full on black stealth tank. BRK 600. Hi, any tips for Aptasia while having a cuttlefish in the tank? I know nothing about cuttlefish. Bergia is the only option. It might be the only option because I'm assuming it's, the cuttlefish are probably going to eat, a butterfly. Bergia is not only, whether it's the only option or not, it's a great option. So try to get some Bergia. Maybe you can get some Bergia from me. I don't know if we can make that a product for you guys, but we'll look into it. Let's see. Reef King. I have a black hammer coral. I've never seen one in the shops. Yeah, hammer coral can come in some crazy colors. Black is very rare. Diacanthus. Gelato schmoletto. Close enough. Sounds delicious. It is. Yes. It's not helping any kind of diet goals. But when it's 90 degrees and humid and awful, it's good for your soul, Let's see. Randy Wheeler, is it a problem having torch corals with shrimp and crabs in the tank? No, not really. Seems like I'll see shrimp or crab crawl across a torch and the next thing you know, brown jelly disease. Oh, that's what you meant. Yeah, I could see that. So like a lot of torches, especially ones recently collected from the wild, are pretty susceptible to that sort of thing. For example, we really don't have hermit crabs in any of our systems. I think they're kind of more of a liability than anything. Less of a problem with emerald crabs, and I think emerald crabs do a much better job on algae. But even then, we don't have that many. So recognize, F-Aptasia is what I use, would never go back to any other methods. So that's probably good advice for like somebody with like a small home aquarium. One of the biggest things that come into play when you're talking about like a really big system, let's say you have like a 600-gallon tank, suddenly the scale changes and nothing like that type of activity scales up. There's just too many little hidey holes. You'll always be having that issue. They're going to survive in the pipes. They're going to survive in the overflow boxes. And once you get to like a coral farm level, that's when like individual injecting is just not happening. I mean, I suppose like if you had like 100 employees, you can throw out the problem, maybe. I guarantee you the nudibranchs will be cheaper than 100 employees. So you might want to go that route instead. A lot of copper bands will go cheaper in that better direction, even with fish losses. But yeah, there's certain techniques that work on a small scale that don't work on a big scale. But if he's got a small tank, you can give it a try. Let's see. So Harkins just said an iodine dip for LPS when I get them to knock out any infection. There's another product out there, not sponsored. By the way, I shouldn't really have to say that I'm not sponsored, because generally speaking, I am like very adverse to even doing sponsorships of any kind. I'm like the anti YouTuber. It's like I actually don't want to work with a lot of brands for that type of thing. So yeah, I'm totally leaving tons of money on the table, I'm sure. But it's just easier this way. But there's a product called Reef Primer, and it's like a blend of like potassium salts. And I have heard that that product does really well to help out LPS specifically that are having infection issues. So it's kind of like a pest and medicative dip. It comes like a powder that you mix into the water, and it's pricey. But these days, guess what's also pricey? Euphilia. So if you've got like, you know, some corals that you want to save, in addition to like iodine and stuff like that, I would look at that. What did I say it was called? Old man brain. Reef Primer. Yeah, so Lisa, I know that you didn't mean me, but it's an interesting topic because like I think that it's a largely like unenforced thing, especially in YouTube, and I know that at some point it's going to be an issue. It's just a matter of when. Like, for example, so a lot of people like behind the scenes don't know this, but like YouTube constantly is changing its algorithm. It's constantly changing its, you know, how strictly they want to adhere to legal guidelines. And like every now and again, they'll just like overtune something and be like, oh, and so one day it might just be like, oh, so-and-so didn't disclose that there was like this, there might be a commercial interest here. We're going to delete that video and give them a strike. Like, wait, what? That video's 15 years old. You know, that sort of thing could totally happen. Because certain channels now, for example, there's been like, for whatever reason, a thing about counterfeit goods. And maybe it's like the hypebeast market with like fake shoes. But like I'm into like watches. Of course, I'm not wearing a watch, but I like watches. And in the watch community, it is like fake watches, replica watches, whatever you want to call them, are highly frowned upon by like real watch enthusiasts. Highly frowned upon. But even the videos where these watch enthusiasts are like denouncing counterfeit watches and they are denouncing the entire thing about a counterfeit watch and how to tell if a watch is counterfeit. The YouTube algorithm suddenly cares about counterfeit products. And it's like, oh, you're talking about counterfeit stuff. You therefore must be a counterfeiter. We're going to delete this video and you're at risk of losing your YouTube channel. So Lisa, you know, talking about having to disclose is actually like a big issue, and it might be a much bigger issue if people's channels are at risk because it's literally like broadcast law. Like there's FCC things, like FCC regulations about a lot of this stuff, and yeah, I could totally see YouTube's appetite for enforcement changing on that. And suddenly people are going to be like, this is a problem. This is a big problem. Half of my videos just got deleted by YouTube. This is not good. So that's why like I've kind of like taken an interest to that little topic and went on that rant. That product's from Polyp Lab, right? Yes, I believe so. Reef Primer. Not sponsored. Let's see. I've seen that you've had a lot of struggles with the greenhouse due to Ohio weather. Do you think a greenhouse would be more advantageous with typical Arizona weather? No. I think Arizona is so blazing hot that human beings don't survive there. A greenhouse, I think, would like kill you. They're so hot. I mean, they're so hot. No, don't do it. Don't do it. No. Please no. A show I watched just got hammered for half the videos and demonetized it. Yeah, I could totally see that happening. Yeah. Let's see. Banzi 29A. I am going to rescape my 25-gallon all-in-one with new live rock. I have sand. Should I clean the sand or will it start a mini cycle? I have softies and LPS. Honestly, I would go ahead and clean the sand. It's really not that much. Reef King, when the next video, bud? I don't know what that means. Okay, so am I the Reef King or is Reef King another channel? I will take that as a compliment. Okay. When is the next video? You're watching it right now. No, like, so, okay. I had a couple of video concepts in mind. So when I went down to Orlando, I visited Worldwide Coral and I visited Top Shelf. Would you guys, so I got the bareliest of barely little bits of footage of those places. And I might be able to do like a light commentary over what I saw there and just give some thoughts. They're both very, very nice coral farms and retail establishments, all right? And they're also, both of them were very nice to me, so obviously I'm not going to say bad things about them. And by the way, they're both really nice. There's not a lot of bad stuff to say. They're really, really, really good. So I could definitely share some thoughts on that. Now, what's funny is I didn't get hardly any real opportunity to talk like in depth about anything. So like, for example, at Top Shelf, I got there because they were hosting like an evening barbecue party. All right. So when I'm there, there's like a DJ, there's loud music, there's like a ton of people. And it's a lot of people that I either knew, so I wanted to catch up with them. You know, I didn't see them all of 2020. Or there were new people that I haven't met. And, you know, they want to strike up a conversation. And so I didn't get to talk about any like in-depth, like actual coral, well, a little bit, but not a lot of like stuff about the individual systems or anything about individual corals. I was lucky just to like put the camera someplace, hit record, and then have my conversation with people. So like my cinematography is not even on point. I left that place not even knowing if I had enough footage to talk about anything with, okay? It was basically a club. So imagine going to film at a club and you're having like a grand social time. So that was my experience at Top Shelf. Really cool place, really cool folks, really good food, all that fun stuff, right? But it was a very social atmosphere. And so I left not knowing a whole lot more about those tanks. And we did talk about dehumidifiers and some other things. So that stuff, right? So I can share some thoughts based on pretty much what I'm looking at past footage of. It's like, oh, I didn't really even notice that when I was there, you know, club and all. Worldwide Corals, I spent a little bit more time there with, and Vic, the owner, he showed me around, so I have a little bit more I can talk about with that. But again, I don't know how much footage I got because I had a lot of conversation with their staff there. Because going into this, I literally had never met a single person at Top Shelf. I hadn't met a single person at Worldwide Coral. So a lot of my my time there was literally just like, oh, this is a new person I've met just for the first time, and a lot of the folks were like really eager to meet me. So just a lot of like conversation, and so it wasn't like a dedicated like film session with like a dedicated like analysis. But if you'd like to have some content around that, we can do that to some degree. Let's see. Augustin Ramirez, what is a good place to buy live rock? Good question. I don't know. I haven't bought live rock in forever. We're pretty much like stuck with buying like dead rock and eventually seeding it to become live rock. Okay, actually, I'll give you the best answer. The best place to buy live rock is from people's old aquariums that had live rock from the ocean. That is the best rock. That stuff is going to be worth its weight in gold. You should see your local forums and stuff like that. And if people still have any real honest to God live rock from Australia or Indonesia or something like that, you should probably have a little conversation with them and buy it all. Let's see. Diacanthus. Sounds like you can die by baking outside or die by boiling in the greenhouse. Your choice. Yeah. Yeah, it's no joke. It's hot. Like in Arizona or Vegas. Yeah. Or even here, it's hot. So here's the thing. I'm actually thinking about turning my greenhouse into a not a greenhouse. So my greenhouse is old. It was built in 2002. This is when LEDs were not commercially available. So a lot has changed since then. And a lot of the math behind what made a greenhouse make some sense doesn't really factor in now. So I actually would like to, to turn it into a more conventional structure to control both the light and temperature better. Kyle Jameson. Okay, he's talking to Harkins. Something lighting. Okay. Reef King. Sorry, I have a YouTube channel in the UK and have a coral farm. Okay, cool. Cool. There is a YouTuber named Reef King. I am not the Reef King. Reef King is the Reef King. Jason Moore. Will there be an after sale? No. There will not. The sale will still be active for a few days, but there's no like additional discounts or anything like that. It is what it is. Algae Warrior, I got 20 pounds of live Fiji rock from a tank breakdown. Best money spent recently. Tank was 10 years old. Yeah. I basically told like friends and stuff that like, hey, if you ever sell this rock, I will take it. I will buy all of it. Will S., thank you for your content. It helped me out many times in the hobby and it's very entertaining as well. It also kept me going during the lockdowns, all the way from the Netherlands. Thank you. Well, thank you, Will. I'm glad you watched. I hope to do more content. It's tough. Sometimes I get writer's block of sorts, and it gets kind of like difficult to come up with different topics and things. So I do have some stuff in the works. But I'm like stretched really thin right now between running this company, doing project management on like development of like all these different like big projects and little projects and this and that and the other thing. So I'm like really stretched thin, but I'm going to try to get some more content out. Oh. Well, we're making pretty good time. So we're already at number 152. So that means that we have about 90 or so corals left in the show. And I'll tell you what, given the fact that we're this late in the, it doesn't really feel like summer because it's been raining so much, but given where we are on the calendar and the fact that it has been so hot, our corals are looking really good. Mainly the ones I'm talking about are out in the greenhouse. The ones in the new building are in a much more climate controlled area, so there's a lot less fluctuation of everything. But even like the ones in the greenhouse are doing really well. And I did mention earlier about how it's like the breakthrough thing that we've found as far as like maintenance out there is we have tanks. So a system might be like 1,000 gallons, but it's made up of several smaller tanks. What we found is every day practically, we turn off one of the tanks. We take all the corals, all the trays, we individually rehome those corals onto brand new trays, and then we take the old tray, soak that in acid, and then we dip that coral, whether we think it needs it or not, right? It's going to go into revive, or it's going to go into Bayer, it's going to go into something. It's going to get a coral dip, whether we think it needs it or not. And then we drain that entire tank out. Obviously, we catch all the fish, catch all the snails, catch all the whatever else cleanup crew that might be there, shrimp, let's say. And then we go through and detail scrape the entire thing down. So all the Coraline, everything, if there are vermitid snails around the plumbing, we take out the plumbing, soak that in acid. And we basically just like polish this thing clean. Fill it up with fresh water. Leave that sit for a little while, drain out all that fresh water. So you're basically like eliminating microbes at that point that, that had required salt water. And if there was any like a flatworm things that that weren't on the trays for dipping, because if you just take the trays out and dip everything, cool, but there might still be stuff in the tank, right? That just repopulate. But this level of maintenance, and then we reintroduce everything, and then we turn on the valves, and it just fills back up. And so we effectively do like a pretty decent sized water change, let's say 60 to 100 gallon water change, by doing this drain out process and everything. And even though it's still connected to the rest of the tanks, okay, these tanks still to a large degree remain isolated. So by doing just one tank and just keep on going, one tank, like that one tank that you cleaned, I mean, it stays clean for a really long time. And it is by far the most effective thing we've ever done. And I think that is an activity that we're going to be continuing to do forever. So it's like every morning we pick a tank, that tank gets cleaned. Whether even like we're like double tapping some of these tanks now, and it gets easier and easier to clean it each time. And so like essentially it's nice to look at super clean tanks. It makes you inspect every single coral because you're literally having to retray every single one. So if a coral looks problematic or anything like that, it's already going to get a dip. But maybe it's overgrown and needs to be trimmed back and then propagated on the spot. So all that stuff can be done. And then once again, you're putting it into a very mature but completely cleaned out tank. And yeah, that's done wonders. And it also just keeps you up on like a regular water change schedule as well. So if we wanted to do like one system that consists of like, let's say for our main glass tanks, over the course of like the first 4 days of a week, it's going to get, let's say a 300 gallon water change over 4 days, plus every inch of those 4 glass tanks, like razor bladed down and fresh water sprayed down clean. So yeah, and suddenly that system, maybe there still are some like little nuisance things or anything like that, but it's going to be taking so much more time for that stuff to eventually take hold again. So yeah, like we're going to keep doing that because I've never seen anything work so well. Yeah. So the greenhouse is looking great. Like long story short, the corals in the greenhouse are looking really, really happy because they're not as neglected as before. Tattoo Dancer 91. I rewatched some of your old videos. The peach tan purple Euphilia look in very white T5 light is superb. Remember the bulb combo for LPS that long ago? It's very natural. It is very likely some combination of ATI Blue Plus and ATI Aqua Blue Special. The Aqua Blue Special is their most white looking light. And I would say that if you did some combination of those two, that's like a really nice look. If you wanted to go a little bit, if you wanted a third bulb idea to go a little bit more violet, Coral Plus is nice. Like for me, my aesthetic choice was 50% Coral Plus and 50% Blue Plus. That, I mean, I really like that look. But if you wanted to introduce like that warmer color, Aqua Blue Special is really what you're looking for. And I think Blue Plus is like the consistent bulb in all of this. Everybody kind of like likes the Blue Plus look. Now, if you wanted to add a wavelength that might help with coral health, but is not a particularly attractive bulb for visual, the True Actinic by ATI is really good, because it's not a violet, it's not like a purple colored bulb that's kind of like mixing red and blue. It's legitimately near ultraviolet light. And so you might get some interesting colors develop in the corals themselves. But it's a very dim and dull colored, hazy purple. So if you're looking for just like tank aesthetics, yeah, Aqua Blue Special, Blue Plus. But if you wanted to get a little bit more creative on some of these other fronts, yeah, check out Coral Pluses and True Actinic. Let's see. Hey Than, do you have enough of the bottle brush SPS for sale? Bottle brush? What is a bottle brush? Is it like is that a common name for another coral that I typically don't call a bottle brush? Let's see. Bottle brush coral is okay, so it's if it is what I think it is. So I looked onto ORA's website. They have like a Marshall Island blue bottle brush Acropora, and it looks like an Acropora tenuis. Yeah, there's definitely like quite a few Acros that we've got. And I'm hoping to buy a whole bunch more. Okay, so if you're looking at like the red dragon as a bottle brush, okay, so that's like, you know, we don't have a lot of those. They tend to be really delicate. Okay, do I miss T5s? We still have a lot of tanks with T5s, so in that sense, no. You know what it is? I almost like, the only time that I really miss T5s is when it comes to photography and videography, because that is one place where LEDs are many generations behind the best. Like they're just not great for photography. Like it's hard to explain. They're very good. You know how I would like, if you caught early in the stream, I talked about like how great Ecotech Radions are for coral farming. A lot of coral farms use it. That is one application, right? It's very good at the application it's supposed to do. But for like photography, no, I'm really not a fan of Ecotech Radions. Like it casts like a really harsh light. The colors are super baked in, and it's very, very hard to edit. And like the result I get, no, don't like any of it. There are some newer LED fixtures that I think cast a much more flattering light for videography and photography. So for example, I like how Orphix look. And in my like 10 seconds of exposure to like the new Neptune light, that seemed really nice also. Yeah, I mean, that's just something that can be done with LED choices. Because right here in my studio, I've got some, they are LED lights. So like what's illuminating me is an LED light. And in particular, there's this light by a company called Aperture. And it casts the most flattering light imaginable on like human subjects, because it's designed for photography and videography. So I know it's possible, but I just think that like the focus that a lighting manufacturer for the aquarium industry, it's not for like It's not for your camera phones and stuff. It's to grow corals. That's job one. So maybe it'll get there, but it's definitely not there yet. So Ina Art, can you please give us some tips for acro eating flatworms? Ugh. Yeah. They are quite possibly one of the worst and most difficult to control pests out there. I think your best bet is to like get a calendar and basically have like a dipping regimen for these corals and stick to it for at least a month. Now the problem is, and this is going to assume that those flatworms stay on those corals and don't go wandering off for just a sec while you dip your corals. And then when those corals come back from the dip, they just like hop back on and start laying eggs again. So that's kind of like why they're really challenging, because they can simply not be there when you're treating, right? They just decided to be on vacation that day. So it's kind of like this long process where you kind of have to take the corals and dip them. Take the corals and dip them, and don't dip them too much to the point where you're going to kill the coral faster than the flatworms would have. But it is like this process. Also, certain fish can help. Some people have had some good experiences with like wrasses helping the situation. So if you had like a menagerie of different wrasses, that might help. So like six lines, maybe melanerises, maybe. Some people really like, they're called pig or possum wrasses. Those could be helpful. But yeah, like having like a small grouping of these wrasses could go a long way with that. Personally, I've never seen them pick at it, but it's a possibility. And sometimes possibilities just have to be good enough. Blue Basin Aquatics. Than, do you still have the C100? No, I sold it on eBay a little while back. Still, to this day, an outstanding camera. And you can probably get them, well, I know you can get them for about $1,000 because how much I sold mine for. But it is a truly outstanding piece of kit, still to this day. Reef King, I think SPS grow faster under T5, more spread, no dead spots. The dead spots is a very real problem with a lot of LED fixtures. Let's see. We have an SPS system here, like an actual farming tank downstairs. And we have on that system 6 Ecotech Radions. And I'll tell you what, the corals are doing great. You know, they really are. They're doing great. But I am looking at adding in some LED UV lights from Orphic to that mix, just to like add in more angles and add in like a more even spread. I think that T5 is like the king of spread, but I want something that provides like a more consistent light, because in practice, we don't really replace T5 bulbs. I've got T5 bulbs in the greenhouse that are probably 4 years old. Like I said, in practice, you should probably replace these things closer to every year. We don't. So LED might just be the more consistent option for us. And yeah, so I'm going to be ordering some of these strip lights from Orphic that are pretty cool. And they've got like a lot of UV and near UV lights. And so it'll add, again, that near UV spectrum in quantity at additional angles. So we're trying to in addition to increasing like the like the amount of par from the blue spectrums and the blue and near UV spectrums, we're also adding in like more coverage as far as like spread and angle. I'm not used to talking this much. It's been a little while. I'm gonna get a sore throat from this. Jason Borer. What's Tidal Garden's go-to coral food for either broadcast or direct feeding? Let's see, what do we do lately? So right this second, I think we're using, we are using Benepets as like a powdered thing. At one time we did some Polyp Lab stuff. We still might have some. It kind of just changes depending on what we actually have available downstairs. And we also mix that in with like some frozen food. So I've noticed that certain corals take to certain things more so than others. Like for example, mushrooms pretty much ignore mysis. Like like if we turn off all the pumps and we put like a little cluster of mysis shrimp down on some of these mushrooms, like they don't close up and eat it. They just kind of like slough it off and let it go. But it really likes the powdered stuff like Benepets and stuff. It'll turn into that mushroom onion. And yeah, so we kind of have to pay attention to what corals like to eat what, and then provide that, because certain corals, they just slough off the Benepets. Other corals, like they turn into like that mucus vacuum and suck it all in. So going with like a number of different products can be really helpful. And I really like to try to target feed as much as I can. And I especially like grabbing up like mysis and feeding polyps of a lot of the LPS directly, especially like the Micromussa lords and like the Bowerbankies and stuff like that. They're like really active eaters. That's very what's the word I'm looking for? Like very it's a very satisfying activity, and those corals just get so big and so healthy. It's awesome. So we've been live now for almost 2 hours. That's crazy. What number are we on? Number 185. So this is a coral that we really haven't talked about much. It's the Stylociniella, and unfortunately this guy is all closed. It just bad timing on that. But they do have little polyps that pop out. And I think that the coral after this is also a stylo, and so you can kind of get an idea of what they look like with their polyps extended. Sometimes people are looking for, for example, like this one. This is a burning banana. This is a really low light thing, and that like encrusts and covers up surfaces. And some folks are looking for that ground cover type coral. So this is kind of an option that's out there, and it's a weird oddball too. Oh man. Okay, so before the show ends, I want to do a quick thank you to the YouTube and Patreon membership crowds. So real quick, on the YouTube end, we have Kev Andrews, Sarah Edwards, Jerry Albright, Justin Harden, Joseph Posada, Jeremy Place, 328 Reef, Deidre Zwinner, and Two Please Coral Reefs. Haven't seen Two Please in a little while, huh? And on the Patreon side, we have Bill Russell, Brandy Camp, Christopher Frame, Harkins Aquatics, who's in chat, right? So everyone can say thank you to Harkins. Jeremy Altman, Alan Jackson, Allura Belergian, sorry Allura, Chuck Admire, Don Bowman, Ernest Wallace Jr., Jean A. Van Voorst, Greg Zimmerman, Gwen Nicodemus, K-Boss, Kalyani Trindam. Oh, by the way, we'll get there in a second. Keith Singer, Kevin Cortez, and Lisa Clow from Lac Fine Art. By the way, Lisa, thank you so much for doing an unboxing video. In addition to having nice exposure, it actually helps us see what conditions stuff arrives in on the customer end of the spectrum. So I always welcome people to show video of what they get from us, because like when we pack stuff, we take stuff like packing like super seriously here, but that's like the last time we'll ever see it, and so it's almost like hope this gets there okay. And so yeah, so the fact that you got your stuff, that it showed up in good shape and that you're happy with it, like really cool. But yeah, it's like we like to see it, just like how beat up the boxes got by UPS and all that stuff. So thank you for that video, and also thank you for the Patreon membership. Thank you to Puddle Aquatics, Rebecca Hall, Reef Infidel, Rigoberto Rodriguez III, Ryan Kern, Santa Nomine, Scotty D, Skylar Korn, Sue Hemmons, The Classroom Reef, Thomas Tarrant, Tim Garner, and Trevor Joseph Overbeck. Wow, there's a lot of people. So thank you all very much. And also, Harkins, I mentioned I want to go visit him out in Vegas and do like a tank tour. I also want to visit Dallas for a couple of reasons. And so Lisa, hopefully when I do visit Dallas, we can hang out and get coffee and talk Patreon strategies. If you didn't know, Lisa is a big time Patreon person. Big time. So I would definitely like to pick your brain on all things. So anyway, we're on item number 192. But before we get too much further, I need to take a bathroom break. I've been drinking a lot of the hydrations lately. Be right back. Yoink. And I'm back. All right. Let's see. Dallas for Aquashella? Yes. Yes. I have not booked travel yet officially, but yes, I would like to go to Dallas for Aquashella. I also want to go to Chicago twice for Reefapalooza and the other Aquashella there. I think they're separated by like 1 month. So Chicago's not that far for me. It's about like a 6-hour drive. And I haven't been to Chicago in a really long time. The last time I was there was for the Shed Aquarium annual fundraiser black tie event, which is like freaking cool to go to. I would like to go there for that again too. However, the first time I went was because I was like a guest of like one of the board of directors. I think he's like the chairman of the board. And so like as a guest of him and his wife, I think that normally to have a seat there, it's like, I think the seating starts at $1,000. So it's like, I don't know if I can make it if I had to like, get there myself. So yeah, but I would like to go to Chicago a couple of times. You did not hear me pee. So first, I know you guys are just kidding, but the bathroom is actually really, really far. And also, this studio is like a sound isolation chamber. You can have spy meetings in this room. Yeah. So Harkin's like, trust me, the bathroom is too far away. Yeah. And also, the bathroom is like a scream-tested chamber. Because I remember when we were putting in that bathroom, I intentionally wanted it to be like quiet. So there's like sound absorbing drywall in there. And I also knew that you can't hear anything outside of that bathroom because I had a get together and my guests, they had like like young kids, and when I was using the bathroom, one of the kids wanted to also use the bathroom and was like knocking on the door. This is like way too TMI, right? But was like knocking on the door and trying to get in, and I kept on saying, it's like, hold on a sec, almost done here. And he just kept on trying to like knock and come in. And when I eventually got done and I opened the door, I was like, did you like not hear me? He's like, no. So I'm like, interesting. No one can hear you if you're in the bathroom. Kind of scary in its own way, but okay. Harkins, that's a good idea. We did that in the past with Patreon, and literally nobody took advantage of it. Like we actually had like discount codes and stuff like that for Patreon people, and I think we even did discount codes for merch. And we even at one time did like a free merch giveaway. Yeah, but now that our Patreon is a little larger, a little bit bigger, I think we can do something again. Lisa's almost done with the Art for Chicago Aquashella badges, but won't be able to go though. That's too bad. Chicago's like a fun food town. That is one of the things I really very much look forward to about Chicago. There's a couple of like cool restaurants I still very much want to try. Austin Levy, how do you afford all of this in your warehouse? Lol, no offense. Selling coral. You might come as a shock. You sell coral. Quit drinking before a freaking live stream. I've been drinking the entire live stream. It is not easy to talk for 2.5 hours. Yeah, what other events are like fun to go to? So the thing about like the whole black tie thing is that because of like I lost all of 2020, there's like nothing cool to even like get dressed up for. I basically got dressed up to be on camera. I kind of miss that. By the way, this particular Micromusa is, I don't usually have like favorites as far as like corals go, but of this kind of coral is one of my favorites. We have like different, we have like all kinds of crazy colored rainbow Micromusa lords, but that one is, so for example, this is like one of the crazier rainbow colored Micromusa lords. But I like that golden gloves variant a lot because there's very few corals that have like a true yellow fluorescence. and it does have that. So in like our sea of like red and rainbow colored micromussa, you have this like crazy yellow ones that just like stand out. So it always kind of catches my eye. But obviously, like, you know, rainbow colored stuff always plays super well. But these days I kind of got into the habit of like committing to like certain colors, and every single coral doesn't have to have like all the colors in it, you know. So if I have like one single dramatic piece that's monochromatic, it's also very cool. This one in particular doesn't have this thing that I'm looking for, but there's some of these micromussas that have like the brightest yellow, or not yellow, the brightest red tips to their tentacles. Yeah. It doesn't seem like this one does either. Maybe it only comes out in like the bluest of actinic lights, but like I'd say maybe like a third of them have like this bright red tip. Kind of neat. See. Did you ever get around to doing consults with that degree license of yours? You just were just busy coral aquaculture nowadays. My consulting stuff kind of tapered off once this became like much more of a thing. Now, funny you mentioned that, but like some people have approached me for consulting, but it's not something that I actively look for. So let's see. Yeah. So, show is coming to a close. We probably have like, I don't know, 20 minutes left. So if you guys have any last minute questions, now's the time. I have no plans after this. Like, you know, I need to mow my grass, but it's been raining all day, so that's not happening. So when I can finally mow my grass, I'm going to go ahead and guess that it's going to be like a freaking jungle. It's going to be a hilariously good time. I recalled you mentioning it a long time ago. It just popped into my head as things to do. Yeah. So there's a little bit of consulting that still happens, but it's not something I advertise at all. I mean, pretty much like you have to like specifically ask for it, and it's like big money bags, like that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's not something I really look to do. I mean, I probably should, because there's probably a lot of money to be made, but it's just not my thing, I guess. So I think that like being in entrepreneurship really changes your, at least it changed my view on that. Because in years past, I did a lot of business consulting. I did a lot of kind of like board of director-ish stuff and kind of like investor stuff. And the kind of the common thread there is there's only so much of a degree of control that you could have or impose. And in the case of consulting, you're giving advice, and that's kind of like the extent of your involvement. And so if the person that you're talking to can't execute on anything, it's like you can't make them successful. You can give them all, it's like the whole, you know, lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, that sort of thing. And so like if you don't care, if you just want to just put in the hours and get paid, like it's like you don't have to take my advice, you just have to pay me. You know, that's kind of consulting, right? But once, like at least for me, once I got into like a more operational environment where like, you know, I'm the owner of a company and I can actually execute on stuff. It's hard to then go back to the, oh, I'm just going to give advice and just, you know, chill, watch you fail because you're incompetent, like that sort of thing. Because like you probably heard statistics, but like a lot of businesses fail. And a lot of it comes down to execution. Also why I'm like less concerned about like, oh, giving out the Tidal Garden secrets. Trust me, if I was able just to execute on all the things that I would want to do for Tidal Gardens, we would be like way more successful. But the execution is like the hard part to any of this. It's almost like, imagine like giving advice about how to set up a reef aquarium to your friends that are kind of like moderately interested, right? At the end of the day, their effort and their knowledge set and their ability to execute is going to dictate their experience in the hobby. You can give all the advice that you want, but you can't do the hobby for them, that sort of thing. So I guess like, do you want to do your tank or do you want to give advice to other people's tanks? You know? Kyle Jameson, do you still consider yourself a hobbyist in the reefing realm despite doing all this on a commercial level for this long? Good question. I think maybe in some ways yes, because a lot of the decisions that I make don't necessarily make financial sense. And I think that like a more hardcore business person wouldn't make the choices that I've made. So I think that there's definitely some hobbyists still in there. And I think that a lot of the stuff that I still enjoy about this whole thing tends to revolve around like certain hobbyist tasks that that also business people wouldn't necessarily enjoy. Like I like to scrape the algae off of glass. Stuff like that, you know? And so I think that, you know, a more hardcore business person would be like, no, that's one of the first things that I'm going to have somebody else do because my time is too valuable for that, blah, 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 blah. And they're probably right. But that's the sort of stuff that I still will do. Phil Harton, after your last tank finished cycling, do you add anything to deal with the ugly phase? No, it really takes care of itself. Like that tank downstairs right now, it needed more flow because we were getting like some cyano that, so what happens is when a tank matures, like the phosphates and nitrate levels tend to go down. And for a little while there, we were really low on phosphate, and in a tank that doesn't have quite enough flow, because we were experimenting with like how much flow is in that tank, it needed more flow. So what tends to happen is a lot of detritus settles in nooks and crannies in the rock. And in a super low nutrient environment, you have this like fuel that's just kind of like sitting there, and low nutrient plus fuel like located in niche areas, that pretty much means you're about to get some cyano. And there was some cyano that popped up. And it's not a big deal. You siphon the cyano and the detritus and it goes away for a while. But it's going to come back because we're still feeding a lot, and more detritus is going to form in those low flow areas, in nooks and crannies in the rocks. So just yesterday, we added in 4 of the AI Nero pumps, the Nero 5s. We added 4 of those, and that dramatically helped things. So we blew the turkey basted the rocks, let the pumps kind of do their thing, and we also added in 1 Seache Voyager 10 to blow across the bottom. it's a pretty big pump. I don't know if that one's going to stay in that tank or not, but it also kind of like kept a lot of the detritus from accumulating. And so the combination of those 5 pumps that we put in there effectively like eliminated all the cyano, like pretty much overnight. And the other thing is we increased the phosphate level. And for some reason, I think that also weirdly helps with phosphate issues or cyano issues. Algae Warrior, do you find that Leptastria like lower light and higher flow? I recently moved mine. They puffed up and super big and started to show sparkles. I think, so for us, it's always harder to say when something likes higher flow a lot because we typically have a hard time providing higher flow. We're like bad about flow. And I think that there's a lot of benefit to providing as much flow as a coral can handle in many situations. So it would not surprise me that you're getting a better response with more flow. In fact, I bet that most of our things here would do better if we were to increase the flow somehow. Diacanthus, are you looking forward to anything outside the hobby? I know Dune is on my mind as something exciting. I'm super excited about Dune. That's like, as far as like movies go, that might be my most anticipated movie ever. I think it's gonna be amazing. It's my favorite subject. Like it's one of my favorite like books ever, and it's from my favorite director ever. Like, what could go wrong? And I heard it's very good from like people that may have seen screeners secretly. Finally getting my georeactor ordered May 4th. Cool. I also have recently ordered a geo calcium reactor. Harkins, when we scraped glass and talked, I found that to be extremely fun. It's therapeutic activity. It really is. And then at the end, you look at it, and then you can see like the fruits of your labor. It's awesome. Russell, back of the tank for the Neros. Yes. You know when I read your thing because it said the Neros is one word. That's like Theranos. Like the pharmaceutical company where everyone's going to jail. That's immediately where my mind went. Yeah, flow has a lot to do with it, Phil. You know, flow is very important. Depending on who you ask, some people think it's more important than light. Chevy fish, I like the sea chase circulation pumps. They are beasts. Yeah, they're like, you know, they're chunky. So I mean, I think that like some people might not like the aesthetic of it. But the price point, the reliability is like very, very good. And also like the guys that work at Sea Chair are like super nice. So I recently just purchased like a handful, probably like 6 pumps from them just to like use in the greenhouse and stuff. But yeah, they're really cool guys. So yeah, Sea Chair's nice. And I really, really, really like the Sea Chair utility pump. If you guys don't have a Sea Chair utility pump, you need to get on that. Because that is like the nicest thing they make, right? I don't even know if they make it or not. It might be a rebranded something or the other, but it's like really good. It's about $100, and it can drain. Like, so for example, like we'll do like a lot of siphoning into like a rolling trash can, right? Like let's say 20, 30 gallons. And to pump that water back out, this thing can drain whatever container down to like that much. You're talking like what looks like 3 to 5 centimeters. I mean, it's basic. It can get something bone dry. Yeah, really, really, really good little pump. So CJ, you get a free advertisement there, not sponsored, blah, blah, blah. What geo did I get? I got the 1218, and I ordered a couple of additional secondary chambers, and I got some custom color modifications, and I got a custom pump modification so that it's running off of an Ecotech Vectra S2 instead of a instead of a sea chay. I think they might be using sea chays there. Phil Harton, how do you measure your flow? Do you have any ways? No, just by eyesight. Steve Berlin at Sea Chay is amazing. Yeah, he's a nice guy. I've met him a couple of times. So like, what I like about Steve is that like he's like a professional. There's some folks in the industry that for whatever reason just like aren't, but Steve is like, you know, it's like there's like people that are like really easy to do business with, and so like I always appreciate like the smooth business like transactions and smooth business relationships, because for whatever reason this industry can be so dramatic, and it's like, guy, you can't be dramatic. Like, you know, it's almost like you want to smack some of these people and be like, look, be a freaking adult, you know? You're trying to do this. We're trying to do business here, and you're trying to like give me some sob story about like how your life was ruined and that's why you can't deliver your product on time. Like, get yourself together, man. Let's see. Reef chilies. My Geo order just shipped yesterday, having ordered the reactor and secondary chamber on May 4th. Yeah. Nice. Very cool. I think this is it, right? We're coming to the very, very end here. Assuming we are. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, you know, it's especially nice since we did miss out on the June show, and I am thinking that there will be an August show. Let me just check the calendar to see if there's anything on there. August 21st is the likely victim. So hopefully we will see you all again next month. Thank you all again for attending, and I hope to have some other content available for you guys to see soon, whether it be like an update or whether it is maybe like the little tours of the shops I saw when I was down in Orlando for Aquashella. That'd be pretty cool too. And I think Becca's working on a video that you guys might like, so we got some things in the works. Slightly distracted right now, but we'll get there. All right. Oh, I think 235 might be the last one. Am I right? Nope, I'm wrong. Am I wrong? Yep, I'm still wrong. It's nice if you knew like how long your show is actually going to go for and paid attention to these things, but not me, not so much. Let's see. 6 hammers and a nano tank, too many hammers, asking for a friend. It's probably not bad as long as you kind of like just keep up on keeping stuff steady for it. All right, now I'm pretty sure we've started all over. Okay, thanks again. I will see you all next time. Happy reefing. Until like next time, blah, blah, blah.